for those of you who don't know me, my name is Rabbi Margie Sella, and I am the Educational Programming Coordinator for Women's League for Conservative Judaism. And I'm really happy and excited to welcome you all to this program today. This is our second installation of Sichot beyn Achayot, Conversations Between Sisters. And these are conversations that are taking place and will be taking place between conservative women of the diaspora and Masorti women in Israel. I'm happy to see so many of you in attendance here today, and I know we have a lot more coming in. As of last night, we had over 200 people registered for this program. And we have registrants from
You need to unmute, Margie.
Oh, so thank you. So should I start all over again? Was I muted?
You have
from the beginning?
registrants. You stopped at. You have registrants from.
Okay, thank you. No, okay. All right, so we have registrants from the United States, Canada, Israel, Latin America, and even one registrant from Paris, apparently. So I'm happy that you are all here, and let's get started. Many months have gone into today's program and this whole series of programs. And I would first like to begin by thanking the members of my committee who have helped me along the way, Diane Friedgut in Israel, and Eli Kremer and Rabbi Wolens Fields in the United States, as well as Julia Loeb and Ellen Bresnick, our co-chairs for education. So before we get to the beginning of today's program, I would like to introduce our international president of Women's League, Debbie Kaner-Goldich, for some words of welcome.
So good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be together. And I also would like to thank very much Diane Friedgut, our Women's League liaison in Israel, and Eli Kremer, our Israel chair, who volunteers and does a wonderful job connecting us with our sisters in Israel. I'd like to welcome everyone from all parts of the world. It's wonderful that we can be together, biyachad. And as we said while we were visiting before, we are truly sisters journeying together. So I want to get going because this is a wonderful program. And I would like to introduce Rabbi Ellen Wolens Fields, the Executive Director of Women's League for Conservative Judaism.
Hello to everybody. Good to see you. I don't know what time zones everyone's in. Some people might be morning. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. But it's just wonderful to be with everyone today. And I want to thank Karen Kayemet Israel, Masorti Olami, and Merkaz Olami for allowing us to have these programs. It's through a grant program that we have that I want to thank Rabbi Sella for putting together. That's how she came on board officially to do our program, Sichot beyn Achayot, to be able to dialogue with each other, to learn about our similarities and our differences. And it was through this grant that we're able to do this. So Toda Rabba, and as Rabbi Sella already thanked our education chairs, Julia and Ellen, thank you, and to Diane Friedgut, our Women's League for Conservative Judaism liaison in Israel, and Eli Kremer, our Israel chair, for helping provide these three programs. And if you like dialoguing with women in Israel, it's not the end. Don't think that it is, because we have another program December 12th. And between now and December 12th, we have Giving Tuesday on November 30th, and all of the proceeds from Women's League for Conservative Judaism's Giving Tuesday goes to our Masorti Women's Day of Study in Israel, which is also virtual. That's what Diane Friedgut has been planning for months now. There will be at least two that we know of in the winter time. January 26th and February 13th will all be virtual. And because of your donations to the Masorti Women's Day of Study on Giving Tuesday or anytime to Masorti Women's Day of Study, we're able to have those two programs. And it is just amazing if you haven't been able to do those. I was privileged to be able to be at two in person. And then because of the pandemic, many of us have been able to be on those Masorti Women's Day of Study virtually. To be able to learn with the scholars in Israel, to dialogue with our sisters in Israel, it's just a wonderful experience. And today is also not the only program that we have to connect us to Israel. Today, we speak about the Kotel, and then on Sunday, January 30th, which is at noon Eastern time, We are going to have a joint program between Women's League for Conservative Judaism and Women of the Wall, hearing directly from the Executive Director of Women of the Wall, Yochi Rappaport, and also a young woman who is a teenage advocate for Women of the Wall, someone I know well, Cameron Fields, will be speaking as well, my daughter, about the experiences at Women of the Wall, and that program will be entitled, Who Owns the Western Wall? So today we will be speaking about from those who have experienced davening at at the Kotel. And then on January 30th, mark your calendars for noon Eastern, because we will be hearing from the head of Women of the Wall, the executive director at that time. So though many of us sit here on this part of the world, our hearts are in Israel, and today especially our hearts are in Israel, as we always pray for our sisters and as we journey together to dialogue together about our davening experiences in Israel. So thank you to everyone who is here now. And as we can see, more are joining us, and this is being recorded and will be on our website for later viewing if you didn't get to see it or if you want to see it again. So toda rabah, and thank you, Rabbi Sella, for organizing today.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi Wollens-Fields, and thank you, Debbie Goldich, for those wonderful words of welcome. Before we get any further into the program, I want to remind you all, the chat is open for you to enter questions. You may not see the chat. The only people who can see it will be Rabbi Wollens-Fields and myself. But at any time during the program, if you have questions for our presenters, you may enter them in the chat, and we will be monitoring that so that we can ask those questions appropriately at the end when we get to the Q&A session. So now let's get to today's program. The topic of our conversation today is davening as conservative Masorti women, and we have two wonderful speakers who will be addressing this subject, one from the United States and one from Israel. They will be speaking about two different opportunities for davening as women in Israel. One, the Women of the Wall, who are advocating for the opportunity for women to be able to daven and read Torah on the women's side of the main Kotel Plaza, and Ezrat Yisrael, the spot which has been designated for davening in an egalitarian setting, still at the Kotel, but not the main Kotel Plaza. They will discuss and explore how we as conservative Masorti women feel about each of these davening opportunities, as well as the opportunity to daven in a conservative synagogue, a Masorti synagogue. We will hear from them about the history of the Kotel and how that has played out over the last 100 years or so. They will compare how our feelings about these davening opportunities may differ depending on whether we live in the diaspora or in Israel. And speaking from the United States, we have Rabbi Deborah Cantor. Rabbi Deborah Cantor is the spiritual leader of Congregation B'nai Tikva Shalom in Bloomfield, Connecticut. Previously, she served as the rabbi of the historic Kane Street Synagogue in Brooklyn, New York, and Congregation Tiferet Israel in Andover, Massachusetts. A member of the first Jewish Theological Seminary rabbinical school class to include women, Rabbi Cantor was ordained by JTS in 1988, where she was also awarded an MA. She graduated from Brandeis University cum laude with a BA in Near Eastern and Judaic Studies. Rabbi Cantor loves to teach. Her classes are engaging and always laced with humor and insight. In 2017, Rabbi Cantor founded the Neshama Center for Lifelong Learning. Neshama invites people from all backgrounds to engage in inspiring, creative, joyful Jewish learning. Neshama is sponsored by B'nai Tikva Shalom in collaboration with a range of community organizations, including the Mandel JCC, the Charter Oak Cultural Center, Hartford Seminary, and others. Speaking from Israel today, we have Rakefet Ginsburg, who has been the executive director of the Masorti movement since November of 2020. She is a second-generation Israeli, descended from both Iranian and Hungarian parents. She holds an MSW from Tel Aviv University and is certified in group facilitation training. In 1995, Rakefet established the Social Services for citizens who work for the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, where she served as executive director for 6 years. From 2001 until 2006, Rakefet directed the Community Projects Division of the Counseling Center for Women and of the Israeli Women's Network, where she conducted programs for women living on the seam line during the Second Intifada, policemen's wives and women soldiers that evacuated settlers during the disengagement from Gaza. Now, before they actually begin to speak, I would like to show you a short video about the space at Ezrat Yisrael at Robinson's Arch. So let me bring it up on my screen. And okay, so that's a video about the experience at Ezrat Israel, the Robinson's Arch egalitarian davening experience. And one other thing I want to show you before we begin, these are photos that were taken at the main Kotel Plaza at various times over the first half of the 20th century. And each of them, to some people's surprise maybe, shows men and women davening together at the main Kotel Plaza. And this is just one of my favorite pictures of myself taken at Robinson's Arch in 2016 when I was there studying in my semester in rabbinical school. So now, without further ado, let us begin the program with Rabbi Cantor.
I will unmute. I want to begin by framing this with some Torah. So let's start with the bracha for learning together, which ends with the words la'asok b'divrei Torah. And let me just share the screen.
Do we want to begin? Rakefet, would you like to begin? And hopefully Rabbi Cantor will be joining us.
Okay. Okay.
Yes? Oh,
Okay.
Yep.
So I want to start and say, as you, first, I'm very happy to be here tonight and with all of you. It's night here in Israel, and especially talk about davening and davening at the Kotel, because it's a very special place for me, and not just for davening. I want to say that my first memory from the Kotel is when I was almost 5 years old. and my father wounded in the army, and we went all together to the Kotel. He couldn't walk because he wounded in his leg, and we took him in a wheelbarrow. You know what I think that's the word for that. So I have this image, this photo in my mind. Seeing the Kotel is a place for me as praying for healing. I didn't know how to pray. I don't think we prayed there, but we were all together, and it was kind of funny because I don't remember separating me as a young child from my father. A few years later, we got back there, and I think I've visited since a few times, but a few years later, I visited there for my brother's bar mitzvah. And then I remember exactly how I'm standing behind the mechitza on the women's side and trying to see him, not praying at all, don't know what what the prayer is about, just trying to see him, and climbing on chairs to be able to see what's going on the other side of the mechitza. The Kotel for itself is a very special place for many national reasons for me, but I never thought about it as a place for davening. I must say that davening in general was not something that I grew up with. I grew up in Israel. I'm second generation in Israel. My parents both are ultra-Orthodox or grew up ultra-Orthodox that left their I don't want to say left their communities, because somehow they still connect, but they decided to not to be Orthodox anymore. And we grew up as kind of Masorti, as Israeli Masorti, that we have Shabbat dinner, we have candlelights on Erev Shabbat, holidays, of course, but praying or holding a prayer book is something that was totally unfamiliar for me. And in many ways, I was kind of, I used to say that I was kind of discluded. I'm not sure that's the word, discluded from my Judaism. While I knew that, of course, I'm Jewish and I speak Hebrew, and I know what does it mean because I study at school, and there is something in the atmosphere that you understand that this is part of who you are. But what does it mean religious, and what does it mean davening, and what is written there is something totally new or different that I didn't know about. One thing I knew when I grew up, that I don't want my kids grow up like that. I felt that there is something that is missing, and I'm saying that I'm conservative by choice. I looked for a place, or I looked for a way to give my kids another opportunity, and I knew that this is going through all of us as family, learning, trying to understand, having some kind of experience as a family of davening. I won't get into this story. It's a long story how we got to that. But it was when my kids were, my son was about 10. And since I have 3 boys, it was obvious for me that I'm looking for a place that's going to be men and women together, egalitarian. As a feminist woman, I knew that I need to be egalitarian, that I'm going to feel comfortable enough. And this was something for us to look for. And it took us a while to find the right place, the right synagogue, the right way for us to pray. Since then, praying is something very special. Learning how to pray, it's not obvious. It's not obvious to study. You see others, you learn from other people. It's a process to learn and feel comfortable with those prayers. Going to the Kotel and pray at the Kotel is a very unique situation. Ezrat Nashim, again, it doesn't feel comfortable for me since I'm looking for an egalitarian place, and I've looked for other options to feel comfortable, and I do, I join my friends many times, and sometimes Nechshot Kotel, and Deborah will talk about later how they go there, and sometimes we join them to support them. So we're praying at Ezrat Nashim, but usually Ezrat Israel is the place, and since in the last few years, this is an egalitarian place that is open for men and women to feel comfortable and pray together. And as you saw in this short movie, I definitely prefer this area. It's not an easy place to pray in. It's not as comfortable as Azrat Nashim. It's many times take us more, efforts to be able to pray there. Not always empty or open for us, since there is no, and you probably all heard about the solution, Mitveh Kotel, the solution that is offering to make this place egalitarian by law or by decision. This is a place that is open and ready for us, but it's not only for us right now. And sometimes when we get there, we see a mechitza in the middle. Sometimes when we get there, we see people that are taking over this place and trying to do some things that are different from our way to pray. And we have to find our way to get the time or be able to find, the corner or the place for us. Even though we're trying to set these places, this is the minhag makom, this is the tradition in this place. This term minhag makom is very important in everything that you relate to, in the Kotel, because the tradition of this place is the reason why we can't have egalitarian prayers at the north side, at the Ezrat Gvarim or Ezrat Nashim or the area near there, because it's not the tradition of the place. That's how the municipalities or the Rav Kotel, the rabbi at the Kotel, trying to say it's not, you can't pray there by the way you pray, because this is not how the habit is there. This is not how the minhag is there. So we're trying to set and say, okay, Ezrat Israel, which we call, and we'll talk on the names of this place in a second. Ezrat Israel, this will be the minhag makom. This is how we're going to act. This is how we're going to pray there. It's going to be egalitarian, no mechitza. We're going to have men and women together. But then, since there is no one to force those rules or those minhagim, sometimes we find ourselves against a group of usually young men that coming there and taking over the place and trying to pray there in their way. So it's a little bit more complicated. Along the year, we have a rabbi there, a woman rabbi, Rabbi Sandra Kochman, that is there for the audience, for people who want to have a Sefer Torah. We have Sifrei Torah for people who want to pray there. We have Sidurim for people to pray there. And we set families that want to have their bar or bat mitzvah can call us and order the place in ahead of time and have their own sefer in place and section for them to pray in. This whole area, the government called it Ezrat Israel when they built it in 2014. It's an area that is in south to the main area, to the main Azarot, and was built specially at the beginning for Neshot HaKotel and later on for the streams, for reform and conservative movements or prayers. They called it Ezrat Israel because it was supposed to be all Israel, not men, not women, all together. We found that Israelis relate more to Kotel HaMishpachot, and that's how we call it, the Kotel, family Kotel. Because people choose that. Israelis, mainly families that are coming there, they choose this place because they can be all family together. They can pray all family together. Now, I want to say, I've said before that I have the experience of going to the Kotel to my brother's bar mitzvah. My son's bar mitzvah, I made kind of tikkun, and I did it in the Kotel HaMishpachot in Azarat Israel. And in 2014, after a short time after this section was ready for prayers, we had my son's bar mitzvah there with all family, with my mother reading, and everybody. It was very, very moving, and for me that became the place for the family, for us. And I understand that families look for experience like that. I see that every time, again and again, when they don't want to separate, they don't want to be in the north area just because they don't want to separate fathers from their girls, mothers from their boys. They want to stay family together and celebrate their simcha and their events together. Being in the Kotel, so Kotel HaMishpachot is the name for us to call it in Hebrew. Egalitarian Kotel, it's another name, Kotel HaShivyoni, or egalitarian Kotel in English. That's another name that was added by a lot of people that felt this is the way for us to describe this place. I want to say that in my position, and even before that, we got there. I'm there a few times a year now, a few times, sometimes in a month, visiting, praying. It's a very special place. I don't know how many of you visited this area, but it's a little bit different than the other Kotel things that you see around, and it feels much more natural, I think, and the feeling that you are part of something, of history, of Jewish history, of Jewish tradition, that is something that is just not just the prayer gets something, in addition to the fact that you're praying by yourself or with a group or with family. It's more this whole atmosphere around, this feeling around that this is a place that you belong to something that is longer and meaningful than just here and now. So I think it's a very, very special place. I want to add to that my grandparents arrived to Israel from different places around the globe, and one from Iran, the other from Hungary. They both came to Jerusalem with a known. They didn't know anything about Israel. They didn't know anything about Palestine then. They came only with one thing that they knew, that they're going to Jerusalem to look for the wall, the Jewish wall. They didn't know what does it mean. They didn't know who they're going to meet here. They didn't have family here when they arrived. They just looked for the Jewish wall so they can meet other Jews and find their way in this place. So for me, it's connected. It's in many ways, this is a place that is part of who I am, for my biography, even if it's not my personal biography, my family's biography, my nationality, and of course my Judaism and my tradition. I saw that Rabbi Cantor is here. I don't know if you want to. Are you?
Yes, I'm here.
You can talk for 3 hours. I don't know if that's the meaning.
I know. Meanwhile, I was talking. I gave a whole Dvar Torah, which no one heard. If you give a Dvar Torah and no one hears it, has the tree fallen in the woods, as they say? So, no, it has not. I just thank you, Rav Kefet. I heard what you were talking about, I just want to give you the framing that I was going to do. I wanted us to think about what is Makom Kadosh? What is a holy place? And you have all experienced what a holy place is. What is a Makom Kadosh? So I want you to think about just for a minute. When is a time, think about a time that you've experienced God's presence, whatever that means to you. A moment you experienced God's presence. Think about that. Put it in your mind. Where were you? Who was with you? What was happening? And when we experience God's presence, it's hard later to explain what that was like. It's hard to put it into words, right? It's experiential. It has to do with everything that's around us, what's happening, who's with us, who's not with us, right? So yesterday in synagogues all over the world, we read Parshat Vayetze. At the end of last week, Jacob was fleeing from his brother Esav, right? Because Esau was going to kill him. And Jacob flees for his life, and he runs, and he stops at a certain point. He stops, or he's tired, right? Doesn't say why he stops. He's in the middle of nowhere. And he goes to sleep. It's not a comfortable place. It's not a hotel. He puts his head on a rock in the middle of nowhere, falls asleep because that's how tired he is. And he has a famous dream, of course, with angels, malachim, messengers of God, going up and down a ladder. Jacob's ladder, right? Then he wakes up. And this is what the Torah says. Then Jacob woke up from his sleep and he says, Yesh Adonai b'makom hazeh. What? Huh? God was in this place and I had no idea. V'ani lo yadati. V'anochi lo yadati. And I had no idea. Because it looked like the middle of nowhere. Why would you think God was in that place? And yet God was with Jacob. Jacob had an experience, a profound experience of God's presence. And then in the next verse, this is what it says. Vayira, and he was filled with fear, with awe, with like wow-ness. And he says, Ma nora hamakom hazeh. How awesome is this place? This place that he thought was nothing, was in the middle of nowhere. Ein ze ki im beit Elohim. This is none other than Beit Elohim, the house of God. V'zeh sha'ar hashamayim, and this is the gate of heaven. So he's in the middle of nowhere, and he's like, wow, God was in this place. And then he says, this is nothing other than Beit Elohim. This is the first time in Torah that we get the phrase Beit Elohim, house of God. And there's a tension right here, isn't there? Because on the one hand, God is with us, even or maybe especially when we're filled with fear or terror or sadness or joy, when we're filled with emotion. God is with us. God dwells with us, right? But also, we need those places, don't we? We need to have a Beit Elohim. We need to have those holy places to go to. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try to share the screen here. So, in the book of Exodus, we read, V'asu li mikdash v'shtachanti b'tocham. After the debacle of the golden calf, there's a realization that we need something concrete. We need holy places where God can dwell, not because God needs to be confined to a place, but because we need places that are constructed as holy sites. So build me a mikdash, says God to Moses and to the Israelites, so that you can feel I am dwelling, my shekhinah, my indwelling presence, v'shachanti, may dwell among them. And this is a picture of, not taken at the time, but this is a recreation of what the mikdash becomes the model for the Beit HaMikdash, for the temple. The Mishkan rather becomes the model for the Beit HaMikdash, the temple. And here is a reconstruction of what the temple might have looked like. And here are the outer walls built by, at least begun, an outer retaining wall. Here's the temple inside. Here's the Holy of Holies. Here's the outer retaining wall built close to the end of the before the Common Era, built by Herod. He's building this big retaining wall because don't forget, the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, is up on a hill, and here's the retaining wall. Now, when we talk about the Kotel, and here's that picture, is one of those pictures. It says here, you can't read it. I type of Jews' wailing place. This is from the early 20th century. And of course, as Rabbi Margie mentioned, there's men and women together. For hundreds of years, Jews had no access to the Kotel. But what is the Kotel? It is a section of the retaining wall of the temple. It's not actually the western wall of the temple. And why was it called the Wailing Wall? It was called the Wailing Wall because Jews would go there and cry, sob, because of the destruction and because of the suffering of the Jewish people. In Exodus Rabbah, Rav Acha said, the Shekhinah will never depart from the Kotel. In 1967, when the Kotel was liberated in the Six-Day War, in this song, the Kotel, moss and sadness, the Kotel, lead and blood. Yesh anashim im lev shel even, there are people with a heart of stone. Yesh avanim im lev adam, there are stones with a human heart. So when we think about the Kotel, we think about all of this history. We think about making a desert sanctuary. We think about the glories of the temple in Jerusalem. We think about the little bit, the remnant, and all of Jewish history, right? And then we think about the fact that we now since 1967, we have access. If you have ever gone on a trip to Israel, particularly a group trip, this is something that that tour guides will very, very often do. They'll take you in a bus. If you're going first to Jerusalem, they'll take you in a bus and they'll take you to the Tayelet. They'll take you to this overlook. And sometimes they even bring a bottle of wine and you do a little l'chaim there, right? This is like a standard, kind of shtick of tour guides. And this is what you'll see. You see even a wider view, but I've zoomed in on the Kotel Plaza. Here's the Kotel, that little bit of remaining wall. Here is the bridge that goes up to the Dome of the Rock, okay? And here is this is a place that people pray, but here's the whole plaza. It's a giant plaza. It's really, really large. The women's section is over here, and the women's section over the years has gotten progressively smaller and smaller and smaller. Here's the women's section, and here's the men's section. That's what we think of when we think of the Kotel. Here, this is where the men are. This is where the women are. This is the Western Wall, the Kotel. Here's the Maghrabi Bridge that goes up, but I want to show you something. This is one continuous wall. If you're walking from this section, from the big Kotel Plaza, and you want to go now to Ezrat Yisrael, to the Robinson's Arch area, you don't feel like necessarily this is all the same wall, because you're sort of walking in a big circle. You have to walk around the bridge, and then you have to go in through this Davidson excavations. So you might feel like, oh, maybe I'm like on another side of the wall, but there is only one Kotel. There is only one Kotel. It's blocked off. Now over here in this section, now you saw, I'm assuming, Rakefet, you saw a little, the little video of what it's like at the Robinson's Arch area. By the way, did you explain why it's called Robinson's Arch? Did I miss that? There was an archaeologist, a British archaeologist named Robinson, and he discovered an arch, a very big area called an arch. And guess what? He got to name it. It's named Robinson's Arch. So what I don't know if it showed in that video is something that I find profoundly moving when I have davened at Robinson's Arch, which I have quite a number of times. And that is that, look, the the area needs to be built up. It's on this very temporary, the place that we're davening is not very fancy. It's a temporary structure. It looks like it's in the middle of being built, which is exactly the case. And then the building was stopped for political reasons. But the view of the Kotel is so moving, I think, because there are these huge boulders, and those boulders fell down in 70 CE when the Second Temple was destroyed. When you are davening at Robinson's Arch at Ezrat Yisrael, you have a sense of, I have a sense of being really in touch with 70 CE, 70, the year 70. It's as if it happened yesterday, those huge boulders. It gives me much more of a sense of history, a sense of connection than I ever feel when I'm davening at what we think of as the Kotel, in the Kotel Plaza. So where do we get, when we're davening, when we're praying, where and when do we have a sense of God's presence? For me, praying in Israel, I don't feel it at the Kotel section where the plaza is. I don't. I have been there at times and been moved, putting a prayer in the cracks, but I don't feel that there's really a place for me there. In fact, as the years have gone on, I feel less and less drawn to that large plaza area. And Rakefet said that she did a tikkun. She did a kind of mending, a kind of fixing up of her experiences years before at what, your brother's bar mitzvah, right? I feel that same way. When I'm able to pray the way that I'm accustomed to praying in this beautiful area of Robin's Arch, as I said, it's not the platform that's so beautiful. It's the people, it's the mood, it's the sense of belonging, the sense of acceptance. It's being right near those boulders where those excavations are and feeling like I have a tie all the way back to the Jews of ancient times, to my brothers and sisters thousands of years ago. Now, I want to tell you that I also love davening in egalitarian spaces in Israel. And many of those places are Masorti synagogues, Masorti minyanim. Not all of them. I've davened also in other, I've davened overlooking the Mediterranean in Tel Aviv. I've davened in other egalitarian spaces, but those are places where I feel really welcomed. I did daven with the Women of the Wall quite a number of times. I just want to tell you, now I'll share again. I had always wanted to daven with Women of the Wall, and I had never had the chance because whenever I was in Israel, something, it was, if I wasn't there on Rosh Chodesh, or I wasn't in Jerusalem on Rosh Chodesh, whatever. So for years and years, I had followed Women of the Wall and made donations and so forth. But in 2013, I was with a delegation of rabbis. We had traveled to visit the Jews of Kiev and then went to Israel. And I realized ahead of time that when we were in Israel, that the last day that we were going to be there would be Rosh Chodesh, contacted my friend Cheryl Berkner, who was coordinating davening and Torah readings. And I said, hey, my friend Rabbi Robin Fryer Bodson and I are going to be with this rabbinic delegation. What time does davening start for women at the wall? And she said, what? You're going to be here? Okay, how about you guys read? How about you read Torah? Oh, you want to lead services? So I said, look, wait, I don't want to lead services. I want to see how, what it's like there. I've never been there before. All right, I'll read Torah. So Robin and I decided we'll split up the Torah reading. We'll both read Torah. Little did we know what would happen. And, we would do the Torah reading for Rosh Chodesh. So here's what I had envisioned. This nice Torah reading, this kind of beautiful davening. But that is not what happens anymore with Women of the Wall. Here are some horrible pictures of the Siddur, the Women of the Wall of the Siddur being ripped up. Here's a picture of police holding back crowds of yeshiva girls who are bussed in. Here is a pious woman slugging one of the women with Women of the Wall. And here's a woman who's blowing a whistle. These are these horrible whistles that are blown so that you can't daven. There's whistles, and then also on the loudspeakers, they're blaring the loudspeakers so that it's very horrible to pray. To say that this is not a good davening experience would be really kind of a profound understatement. What happened that day was that in advance of our being there, unbeknownst to me, these guys, this really iconic photograph, these four guys from the paratroopers, 1967, very famous photo by David Rubinger. So this photo was, and then these four women. So these four guys liberating the wall, and then liberating the wall again, these women who are leaders of Women of the Wall. And that morning, Dafka, that morning, these guys were there. A couple of these liberators were actually there. And this is right before, and so this had been publicized, that some of the original liberators of the wall from 67 were going to be there. And here are Leslie Sachs. So here is right before the services started. And my friend Rabbi Robin Fryer Bodson and I got there really early because we wanted to make sure we were in the right place. And after all, we were going to be reading from the Torah. Here's what happened. Detained at the Kotel. Local rabbis wanted 10 women arrested at Western Wall in Jerusalem. On Monday, my rabbi was arrested. So what happened was, here I am before everything happened. Here's Robin, here's me, and we're right in the middle of the crowd. But we had evidently been identified earlier by the police as rabble-rousers because we had gotten there early. And as we went, and it was actually, despite the whistles and the unpleasant shouting, it actually was a beautiful davening, beautiful singing. And I thought, okay, I can sort of block out the whistles and the all the unpleasantness. And they were our colleagues, a bunch of the men were on the other side of the mechitza, kind of just standing there watching and supporting us. As we were walking, so we were not going to be reading Torah in the women's section. We were going to be reading in the Robinson's Arch egalitarian area. As we were walking, as we were exiting, from dancing and singing with the Torahs, beautiful. We're exiting, dancing and singing, going around here where we think we're about to read Torah. We get nabbed by the police, one by one, until there are 10 of us. And this is what I never realized. There's a little prison, there's a little holding jail right near the, who would have known that? Right near the Kotel. here we are afterwards. That's where we were fingerprinted. Each one of us was individually interrogated. We were there for quite a few hours, and we thought we were going to court. And what were the three crimes? I have to say that they had a video of me when I went to my individual interrogation. They showed me a video and they said, "Who is?" And the woman said, the police officer said, "Who is this?" I said, "It is I." And she says, "And are you wearing a talit?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "And are you singing?" And I said, "Yes." And then she says, "And are you praying out loud?" And I said, "Yes." Thereby, I had confessed to all three of my crimes. And I pondered, why praying out loud and singing are two different crimes, but whatever, right? So this is when we were at the very last moment. We were about to, we had our pictures taken, all of that stuff, and we were about to go to court to be sentenced. And all of a sudden the lawyer for Women of Law came running up and said, "You're free." And it was Natan Sharansky who had intervened for us and made sure that we were set free. And there was a whole story. So I want to ask so what were the reactions? At the time, my children were young teenagers. And I finally got street cred, with my teenagers, because I'd been arrested, for some cool thing. But there were lots of people who said, "Oh, Rabbi, we're so proud of you," blah, blah, when I finally got back from my trip. But then there was another reaction also, which was, "What do we care about the Kotel?" And I got that reaction from a lot of Israelis. What do we care about the Kotel? There's so much big questions. There's so many other more important questions here than what happens at the Kotel. The Kotel, it's a thing for extremely pious Haredim. It's a place for tourists to come. For us, that's not the center of our religious experience. And it was very different reaction that I got from Israeli friends and colleagues than I got from American friends and colleagues. Very different. And so the question is, I have a whole bunch of questions that are raised by that. There are a lot of issues, right? Is the fuss over the Kotel a side issue, or is it a very important symbolic and real issue? How important is the Kotel symbolically or strategically? And what happens when politics and holiness converge? Because there are a lot of issues, right? Who has the authority? Who has the authority of the Kotel? You're gonna really explore this in January. Is it the police, the rabbis, the city, the Supreme Court, the prime minister? Is this an internal Israeli matter, or is it concern of the entire Jewish people? To whom does the Kotel belong? Not just legally, but religiously and spiritually, right? The issue of civil rights versus respecting minhag hamakom, the way that we do things here, right? Is the Kotel the holiest site because of its proximity to the Holy of Holies? Is it a tourist attraction? Is it just an ultra-Orthodox synagogue? Does it ever veer into avodah zarah, idolatry, worshiping a place, right? Where we kind of give it more significance? Is the Kotel controversy part of a growing trend to marginalize women in Israel? So all of those questions are interwoven with the question of what goes on at the Kotel today, and especially what goes on with the Robinson's Arch area, with Ezrat Yisrael. The
Thank
place
you, Rabbi.
supposed to have hegemony.
Thank you, Rabbi Cantor. That was very informative and inspirational. I'd like to go back to Rakefet now and have you speak a little bit more about Robinson's Arch, about the facility there, and perhaps about some of the recent events that have taken place this year at the Robinson's Arch. And then we'll see how the time goes before we move into the question and answers section of the program. Again, if you have questions, please enter them in the chat, and we will be moving to the Q&A at the end of the program. So, Rakefet.
Okay, so I want to start and say that the area, the Azarat Israel, the Robinson Arch, or again, all the names that you can call it, Kotel HaMishpachot, egalitarian Kotel, all those names to the same small area, small platform, is actually the solution of exactly what Rabbi Cantor just described. That actually was built as a solution. It started as a solution for the women's of the wall, and later on got the solution for the reform and conservative movements as well. And this was supposed to be the situation that the solution that gives all those fightings and I want to say the fact that the platform, the regular, what called as a regular or North platform for women and men, that became more and more extreme, more Haredi, more like a Haredi synagogue, and uncomfortable for many Israelis. That was supposed to be exactly the solution for that. I want to say, as a mother of boys, as I said at the beginning, my boys has swore to the army at the Kotel. And even, the area for the swearing, or the area for those events that are not exactly the praying part, but exactly behind it. And when we got there, they separated soldiers, men from soldiers, for women soldiers. And we were like, it's not a praying, it's a ceremony. What is it? It doesn't, but this whole feeling that this is how, and they started to say, this is how the rabbi of the Kotel asked us to do. Later on, I can tell you the rabbi of the Kotel doesn't ask them to do that, but they didn't even know, because it felt like an ultra Haredi synagogue, so they have to act like an ultra Haredi area, no matter what they do. So the egalitarian part of the Kotel was supposed to be the solution for that. And it was built to be place for egalitarian prayers, for women to read from the Torah, to put talit and tefillin and all of those things that we want to do, and want to feel free when we do that. And don't want anyone to tell us that it's not minhag hamakom, it's not the place to do that, or it's not okay to do that. Few problems, as I said before. Nobody, this is a decision in general, but nobody actually got the decision, Sherota approved it by the government in a way that it's going to be something that you can force. So if there's a group that want to interfere and come there and put a mechitza, you can't do anything. I want to tell you about what happened just in the last Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av, as you all know, this is the night of the structure, and this is the night that we're all praying and reading and crying from destruction of the Mikdash and the temple, and we all talk about how hatred between brothers, and how the split in the Jewish people actually brought it to us. Erev Tisha B'Av was Motzei Shabbat this year. So we've sat for 9:30 to meet all of us together. It was 8:30, I don't remember exactly the time, but it was about an hour and a half after Motzei Shabbat, to meet all and read Megillat Eicha at the Kotel, at the egalitarian Kotel at Azarat Israel. When we got there, actually the first people that arrived there a few minutes before already called me and said, look, there is a mechitza here and a group of boys that is filling the area. When I got there, we saw about 300 or 400 kids. I want to say kids, even though they were teenagers and there were few adults. It's important to say that because they were not families. And I think that's part of it. They came as Rabbi Cantor said before, the girls that they bring there to protest against the women of the wall. It's almost the same. It's boys and girls, not Haredim, by the way, more ultra-Orthodox, kind of national Orthodox. It's another version, but it's not necessarily Haredim. In Hebrew or in Israel, we call it Hardelim. It's something. It's another group. But the idea is that they relate to this place as this is to give it to the Reform and Conservatives forbidden. We will do everything that needed to stop them from taking over this area and from praying in this area. Now, they were there by hundreds. They filled the place. They prayed, loud, and they didn't let us pray. And at the same time, I think that was the hardest part, to hear them first. Every time that a woman read from the Megillah, they were even screaming more and more not to let us read and not to let us pray. But what they said what the teachers said to their kids, that was even more and horrifying for me, saying that this is a fight for us. We're fighting. This is fighting. We're fighting for Jewish legacy, and we have to fight those people who are trying to pray here. This is a war. Those are words that have been said, reminding you, Erev Tisha B'Av, in a night that we're crying exactly from those reasons. That was very hard. That was very hard night. There were all screamings and shoutings there that tried to disturb us and not let us get in. At a certain point, it was so filled by them that we couldn't. The police didn't let us get in, and we had. It was really hard to see them, and mainly not because they were there and praying, mainly because they were there to stop us from praying. They were there to stop us from having our prayers the way we want to pray, or the way we used to. Talking to them was like, we couldn't talk to them. They didn't want to talk, or they didn't want to hear anything. That was their way or no way. I think, a day after and the whole week later, we read in newspapers and in different places that there were a few Orthodox rabbis that called against this group. This group, there are a few names of this, but it's a group of people that trying to disturb us before, and even more though after. And every time we say we're going to do there something, they are coming and trying to interfere. It's happening in Rosh Chodesh for Neshot HaKotel, and it happens for us every time we publish that we're doing there. They were there, by the way, in the last Rosh Chodesh Kislev, while they were fighting against the women of the wall and the other section. Immediately when it ended, even they started to pray there even before. And the minute the women of the wall finished their prayer and people went home, they came to this area and tried to stop us from having bar and bat mitzvah, that were ceremonies that were supposed to be there. And we had to call the police again to help us and stop them. It's I want to say it's a small place, but it's like Gzelat Kibsat Rash. It's like taking from the poor man the only small place that he or she has, because it feels like this is a small place. And as Rabbi Kender said, it's not even a nice site. It's a nice place because it's the Kotel, and it's meaningful because it's the Kotel, but it's not set the same way that we supposed to have. We have a cupboard there that is like something that we brought, and we're trying to have our Sidurim and our Sefer Torah that we're bringing. Not the government pays for that. Nobody. It's the Masorti movement that pays for all of those things to have that there for everybody. We're trying to. The ground there is like a wood made of wood that once in a while they're replacing they're replacing it, but it doesn't look the same. It doesn't look as beautiful and as set. There is no toilet there for people if they need bathroom or something like that. It's Kibsat Arash. It's the small, poor thing, but it's for us that really, really want to pray and don't want to pray separately in the north area. And still, there's a group of people that are trying to take us or take over this, on this place and take it from us, just because they think that we're not allowed to pray there. I've met, after what happened in Tisha B'Av, I've met with Rabbi Melamed. Rabbi Melamed is a rabbi, is ultra-national Orthodox, a rabbi, very known one. And we've met at his house. He published something against those kids that try to interfere us. And I called him and he invited me to his home, and we've talked. And later on he wrote and said, it's meaningful for those people to come to the Kotel. The Kotel is a meaningful place for them. They want to connect to their heritage. They want to connect to their place and to their people. No, they don't do that in our way, in the Orthodox way, but they still do that. And it's important for us to let them do that and not try to push them away from this Jewish tradition. And I felt that he said something that I felt, for so long, that they're trying to push me from my place. It's my place as well. I grew up here. I visited the Kotel so many times in my life, even before I prayed. I didn't come only to pray there. It's just a place for me as part of Jewish people to visit. It's part of my history. It's part of, as I said, it's part of my family history. To think that they try to disconnect me from this place is unforgivable. I won't accept it. I'll fight for that. I'll fight for that, no matter what. And if they won't let me pray there, I'll find my way there. But they won't be able to push me away from this place. And to think that they have, or somebody have, more privilege, more zchut on this place, more than I have, more than my kids have, more than my family have, I won't accept it. It's mine exactly as it's there. And I'll fight for this place because it's my right. It's my right to be able to pray there in my own way or in my way. And I think the egalitarian section or the Kotel HaMishpachot is something for all of us to say, this is our connection. We're not, sometimes they tell us, they try to insult us. And they say, go to Tel Aviv, pray in Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv is important for me. I live, by the way, very close to Tel Aviv. It doesn't matter. It's not the Kotel and it's not Jerusalem. And the Kotel, I won't give up on the Kotel, even if I'll visit and go to Tel Aviv many times in a week or a day. So it's important for all of us to remember, it's not a fight for a place, it's a fight for connection. It's a fight for our right to be connected to our place.
Okay.
Rakefet,
Thank you. I think.
I just want to ask Rakefet a question.
Yes.
What would need to happen? What would need to happen, Rakefet, for to prevent, like legally or politically, what would need to happen to prevent the the Robinson's Arch area from just being taken over? I mean, you have no rights, right? We have no rights, even though technically we're the Masorti and reform movements are in charge. But what would need to happen so that you would have some basis to stand on and say, get out? We have Bar and Bat Mitzvah scheduled. We're having, davening here.
There's a decision that the government first have to decide. There's a decision that is on the government's table. There is a compromise that made that called Mitveh Kotel, the Kotel solution. The compromise is a hard one. It's a compromise from all sides, but mainly from the streams, mainly from the Reform and Conservative and the Shota Kotel, by the way. They did a lot of compromise, a big compromise to be able to accept it. And we all accepted that. And the government brought it and decided about it. And then they had to sign that this is gonna force actually that this place has no mechitza. So if there's somebody who puts a mechitza, you can call the police and they'll move the mechitza. They didn't sign it. So when somebody puts a mechitza, you can't do anything. There is no police. There is no one who can force that this is minhag hamakom, to pray with no mechitza there. So they put a mechitza in the middle. By the way, on this Rosh Chodesh, there were no women, but they still put a mechitza. Just to put, a finger in the eye It was just like that because there were no women. They didn't need a mechitza, but they put it just for us to see that we're not going to pray in this place the way we want to. And it's not ours. It's going to be their Orthodox or ultra-Orthodox or whatever place, no matter what. So it's a decision that the government have to sign on. And we're pushing our Knesset members, our government to do that. I don't know. I just got a message a few minutes before we started that there were ministers that were against this decision. Some that are want to push it. To make this decision. It's a fight in the government as well, but it will probably take time to do that.
Okay, thank you both. So our time is running short. And I do want to allow time for some questions. So I want to move into the Q&A section to finish out the rest of the session. So if Rabbi Wollensfields can also be pinned on the screen with the other three of us. I would like to begin by asking either one of you. What we heard earlier when Rabbi Cantor, when you spoke about the positive experience of davening at Robinson's Arch, and I agree with that 100% because that is the same experience that I have had at Robinson's Arch. And how can we encourage our people to go to Robinson's Arch and have the same experience? What can be done? Instead of concentrating on the fighting, how can we concentrate on the positive and make this a positive experience for our constituency?
You want to take that first, Rakefet? How you would do it within Israel, and then I can talk about diaspora?
Okay. First, let us know that you're coming. We're going to make sure that you're going to have a place to pray and make sure that if there's something going on there, we'll let you know and you'll be updated. So let us know. Come over, visit there. Every time you're in Jerusalem, go there. Because one of the things that we're hearing a lot is that it's empty. No, it's not empty. Many times it's very full, but it's not as full or not, the same way that the north side is. So it's important for you to visit this place. It's important for you to be there. Take pictures there. Let other people know that this is the place to pray. One of the things that we're suffering is that the entrance is very small. If you don't know where it is, you won't find it. Let us know that you're looking for that. We'll let you know how to get in. It's open 24/7. Go there, visit there, let other people know, take pictures, make sure that you're praying there. This is, if you're not there, in Hebrew, there is a way to say, lichbosh et ze beliyot. You have to be there to conquer this place, to say we're here. And we have to say we're here. So every one of us that is going there and praying there, it's another way to say we're here and this is the place that we need and want and feel comfortable in.
So I want to just, as a rabbi here in the States, I want to just emphasize that the egalitarian kotel is a very, very well kept secret. And look, we in the diaspora have been prevented because of the pandemic, have been prevented from visiting Israel. But that's going to come to an end. And now is the time for groups, synagogue groups and other kinds of groups and families. Now is the time to start planning trips to Israel because it's going to open up again, right? And now it's sort of quasi-open. It's not even, right? But now is the time to start planning. And I myself said just the other day to some of my family, I want to start to plan another congregational trip to Israel, which we haven't done for some time. And they said, well, it's not, I said, no, but now is the time to start to plan, because if you want to organize a trip to Israel, it takes a while. Make sure that whoever you go with to Israel, and make sure if it's your rabbi who's organizing this, make sure that not only Rakefet knows and the Masorti folks know in Israel, but make sure that whoever your tour guide is going to be, whatever group you're going with, that they know this is an important thing for you. Social media, when you're there, take pictures, post them, and talk about how beautiful it is. By the way, I've been to the Robinson's Arch area when there are, when they're a group, when there are minyanim, right? When davening with a group. I've also been there late at night. I've been there really on an off time, and it's awesome at night too. It's just, wow. I feel like, like Jacob, like, like, wow, God was in this place. So it's also a very spiritual place. Friday afternoon is a beautiful time, for Erev Shabbat is a beautiful time to go. But again, for women in the diaspora, now is the time to plan trips and to make sure this is on the itinerary, maybe even more than once. Because it doesn't necessarily occur to trip planners. It doesn't even necessarily occur to your rabbis, but make sure that this is really an important part of where you go and what you do. And I want to ask Rakefet, how else can, beyond that, how else can, and with our money, we can support Masorti. How else can we support this egalitarian kotel?
This place, as I said, we operate this place only by ourselves. I mean, only by the people, by the Masorti people, and by the Masorti money. And it's important to say that because we're really here to do that for Klal Israel. This is absolutely Klal Israel, because no matter who's the family, where they're coming from, they can be Orthodox, Reform, Conservative, Chiloni, whatever they are, whoever they come from, every place in the world, Jews, they want to have their ceremony there. We're going to give them all the support that they need, including, by the way, a rabbi that is there, as I said, Rabbi Sandra Kochman, that is there and helping whoever needs. If they don't have a rabbi for their own, she's there to help them and to be there for them. Every way for you to support us there and to support our work there is very, very important. That's one. Second, it's your support in U.S. opinion about the Kotel and about the necessity of this area as a solution, as a place for you to visit. Because for our government to hear that for Israelis it's important, and you, Rabbi Cantor, said that very beautifully, for some Israelis, they gave up. They gave up on the Kotel, and I'm sorry for that. And I said I won't accept it, but I understand that there are some people who feel like that, and they need to hear that you, American Jews, won't give up on this place, and will fight for it as well. It's important for them to hear that you want this place, and you not just ask them, you demand them to get this decision and make sure that this is going to be an area that you can pray in your own way, because they feel that this is something that nobody wants and nobody needs. But they know at the same time that the majority of Jews, especially in US, are Reform and Conservative, and they understand that if they won't get your support, they miss something. And you have to say that your support, you'll support Israel no matter what. But at the same time, you need Israel to recognize your way to pray, especially in this place. And this is a very important thing that they have to hear from you. So every time you meet an Israeli politician, an Israeli who wants to politics, and I know some of them go through US and make sure that the American Jews, will support them. Let them know this is something that you demand from them to do. You demand that they'll make sure that this section is going to be stay egalitarian and open for Reform and Conservative Jews who want to pray like in their own way, and the women of the wall, of course, as well, they want to join them.
Okay. So just a couple of little tachlis questions. There was a question posed whether or not it is possible to place a prayer in the wall at Robinson's Arch, just as you can at the main Kotel Plaza. And are women able to put on talit and tefillin at any place at the kotel that they would like at any time? Or are there restrictions on that?
You could easily, really the only place I would feel comfortable doing that, honestly, is at the egalitarian kotel. But there's sometimes Rabbi Rabinovich, who is the rabbi of the kotel, it depends on, sometimes he makes these rulings that it's against the law for women to, as I was arrested for praying out loud, wearing a talit, and singing, right? So it varies, he makes these pronouncements, and then there are police of the kotel that don't do what he wants, and it's a very complicated thing. If you're a single, an individual woman who goes to the Ezrat Nashim, the women's section, and puts on and wears talit and tefillin, you're really a target. It's not something I would do. I mean, maybe I would do it with Women of the Wall or with another group, but not because I think I'm going to have a great davening experience. I might do it as, something else, but no, it's not something that you would feel comfortable doing. And Rakefet, have you ever put a petek, a little note in the wall in the egalitarian section?
Yeah, many times, even though now in the last 2.5, almost 3 years now, it's closed and you can't get to the wall. We're now fighting to the accessibility to the wall again. It's a little bit further
away.
But yeah, you can touch now the wall, but it's an issue. But yes, we did it many times.
In the meantime, take a petek, put your little note in the wall, and then walk around the Mugrabi Bridge to a place where you can daven in a beautiful setting, and where a place you can really daven in the minhag hamakom, in the way that we're accustomed to, according to our custom, which is beautiful and which is egalitarian, and where people, are not saying that you're less than. Put your petek in and then walk around and come to the egalitarian part.
Okay, thank you. And then there is a question here. I know, Rakefet, you mentioned that part of the problem, I don't know if that's the right word, but that there is not a presence every day at Ezrat Israel, at Robinson's Arch. If that were to be more frequent, if please God, there were a presence there every day, would that make a difference in this situation?
Sure. Yeah, one of the things that we want is that the entrance is going to be more known, so people can get in and out, because I'm sure when people will know that this is something that they can get in and they know where to, where the entrance is, we'll see more people getting in, more people using this area. I think part of that is, there are a few things here. One, ultra-Orthodox, especially Haredim who live around the Kotel and pray in the Kotel 3 times a day, it's a little bit different than us and our people. And our people are not praying, it's a little bit different. So the fact that you can see in the north side people, even 3 or 5 sometimes during the night, makes it different. It's not totally empty. And it's much more known and it's bigger. When you get into the Ezrat Israel, it's a small entrance. It's very narrow. When you have to go, you saw that in the movie. It's a narrow walk in. It's a long way to get in, and it's not very, very comfortable. It's okay, but it's not very comfortable. So one of the things that we're looking at the solution is to make this entrance more accessible, more open, more easy for people to find, more easy for people to get in and out. And if we'll see more, and it's a chicken and an egg. If you'll see, if it's going to be bigger and easier to get in, you'll see more people. If you will see more people, the need to make this entrance bigger and easier gonna be bigger. So we need to do both. We need to fight for the solution to make this entrance easier and accessible, and at the same time be there. And I'm sure if we'll see more and more people, and we already see more and more people than we saw 2 years ago and 5 years ago. Every year it's more and more. We see that by ceremonies, by bar and bat mitzvah, that people are coming, since they go, a lot of them come through us, a lot of them come for them, by themselves, but a lot of them come through us. We see how the numbers growing, and we all also see that every time we come, we see some people there. By the way, sometimes even a group of Haredim that just look for a place, a quiet place. They don't have women around, so they just pray there. If they respect the fact that there is no mechitza there, everybody is welcome.
Thank you. Okay, so we just have 2 more questions here. I want to finish up, and because we're getting a little close to the end. Since you were talking about the entrance, if you could not find the entrance, and if you were to stop and ask someone where the entrance is, would they tell you where it is? And then also, why don't women of the wall pray? Go ahead.
Not necessarily. No.
They
Okay.
might not know. It is very well hidden.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
They might not know, or they might not want to tell you.
All right. And then we'll finish up with, why don't women of the wall pray at Robinson's Arch, and do conservative men prefer Robinson's Arch?
Well, I'm going to answer. I will not answer on behalf of conservative men. Although, listen, a lot of my colleagues, I know a lot of rabbis, right? So a lot of my colleagues also prefer Robinson's Arch because they feel alienated from a lot of what goes on in the Kotel Plaza area. So many of them do really love Robinson's Arch as well. But as to your first question, the women of the wall, there's something to be said, and this I didn't mention earlier, we didn't touch on earlier. There's something to be said for the experience of just praying with women. I'm very much an egalitarian, but I've had experiences of just praying with women. Look, who are we? We're Women's League here. We know that there's a value to women-only spaces, right? And there's a value to women gathering and doing things together. That's why there's a Women's League. That's one of the reasons there's the Women's League, because there's something special about what happens when women get together. And that goes for praying together as well. So Women of the Wall, their original thing back in the 80s was they want to be able to pray with other women in the women's section according to their custom, which is that women are permitted to, do the things I was arrested for: sing together, pray aloud, read Torah, wear talit, wear tefillin if it's a day you wear tefillin, right? They wanted to be able to, peacefully do that. And there's enough room. I mean, even the women's section gets smaller every year. There's plenty of room to do that. And that was their original thing. So one of the compromises that Women of the Wall has had to make is that they agreed that eventually, when the Robinson's Arch area is constructed properly and there's a proper entrance and, all the other parts of this deal go through, that they will then switch over to praying at Robinson's Arch area. There's a splinter group of Women of the Wall called Oh Wow, Original Women of the Wall, that says, no, we don't want to do that. We want to just we want to fight for our rights to pray as a group of women in the women's section, to be left in peace, to pray in our way in the women's section. So there is that. But in the meantime, no, the Women of the Wall are still committed to fighting to be able to pray in the women's section, but they're part of this agreement, which has yet to be implemented. They're part of this agreement about the egalitarian Kotel.
Okay. Rakefet, did you have anything to add to that?
Just about the men, I think they do prefer the egalitarian section. Sometimes they do stand behind the Women of the Wall just to support them. And I must say that I've heard one of them said once, and this is why I think it's an important experience for a lot of men, or I want to say almost every man, to have this. Since almost every woman experienced what does it mean to stand behind a mechitza at least once in her life, and knows if she chose not to, she knows exactly why she chose not to. She chose not to. But most of the men never experience that. What does it mean to be behind the mechitza when the praying is in the other side? So when I've heard a man rabbi says, it's really hard. You can't hear the praying. You hardly hear the woman. You hardly hear the singing. You have all the time. You have to follow. It's hard to follow like that. I thought it's important for each one of them to experience that at least once in their life, to understand what does it mean for a woman to be behind a mechitza when there is a prayer in the men's section. So if you want your man to feel that, bring them to the women of the wall and let them stand behind. And then they'll decide, and then they'll definitely choose to be in the egalitarian section.
Very true. Very true. Okay. Obviously, we could go on quite a bit. This is such an interesting topic, and there is so much to say about it. And the situation is changing and unfolding as we speak. I want to thank both of you for your participation today, and for sharing your stories with us, your personal stories, as well as some very informative things about the Kotel Plaza and the Kotel at Robinson's Arch. I want to thank all of our participants for Zooming in today and for bearing with us during some technical glitches at the beginning. I apologize again for that, but I thank you for sticking with us. This has been a really fascinating program. And I'm sorry we were not able to get to all of the questions. Like I said, clearly, there is much more that could be discussed on this issue. And I would invite you all to please remember the program that we have coming up in January to discuss further the situation of the women of the wall. And I would advise you all to keep abreast of what's going on in Israel, and go to Israel and make arrangements to go to Robinson's Arch. If you've never experienced it, you are in for a truly awesome davening experience. That is my feeling. So again, thank you all. And just one last thing, I invite you to be with us for the third session of our program, which is going to be on Sunday, December 12th, when we will be hearing from different people in the conservative and Masorti movement, comparing life in the diaspora, where we live as Jews as a minority, versus life as Jews in Israel, where we live as a majority. But even there, Masorti Judaism is a minority within the Jewish majority. So we will be hearing from 3 different leaders of the conservative Masorti movement from the diaspora, and 3 from Israel. So again, that is Sunday, December 12th. Please mark your calendars, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all again next month. And thank you very much for coming.
Toda.
Thank you. Yasha kochachen.
Thank you. Baruch Tiyah.